This video is brought to you by BetterHelp. So I've noticed recently that we're getting comments on videos and our streams that say things like, does Michael have ADHD? Or, damn dude, this is way too ADHD for me to watch. And you know what? They're not really wrong, because if you've ever watched me go on an unhinged rant during a video or tuned in for one of our sometimes chaotic live streams, you won't be shocked to know that I have ADHD, and I'm certainly not alone, because it seems like now everyone has ADHD because a 17-year-old on TikTok diagnosed them. And every ad on social media is for scammy apps that will diagnose you and send stimulants right to your door. Plus, now there's supplements that you're supposed to take with your stimulants. And don't even get me started on folks that casually throw out phrases like, oh my God, I'm so ADHD.
You don't have that?
No.
So why would you say that you did?
Yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore.
And this is not some isolated bonanza. According to the FDA and DEA, dispensing of stimulants grew 45.5% from 2012 to 2021. ADHD diagnoses especially spiked during the pandemic. This has led to major shortages that make finding Concerta in Los Angeles feel like duck hunting in Antarctica. If you don't have ADHD, I'll just give you an example. Recently, I got my prescription refilled by a psychiatrist, and it took 3 weeks for the medicine to show up at my pharmacy. Let me know in the comments if it's ever taken you 3 weeks to get a medicine that helps you function well. But it's not just that more people apparently have ADHD. It's that ADHD seems to have transformed into a catch-all term to describe funny quirks, debilitating social troubles, and everything else in between.
I made myself a burrito for dinner. And because I'm weird, I like to eat my burritos with a fork, because whenever I make burritos, I make them really messy.
So why is ADHD the hip mental illness of the moment? What does the explosion in diagnoses, medication, and online discourse say about us as a society? In other words, when did we all become ADHD? Okay, before we keep going, I want to thank this video sponsor, BetterHelp. If you've experienced anxiety or depression, or just felt overwhelmed recently, BetterHelp is a resource that can help you feel better. And as I've talked about before, I'm someone who struggles with a wee bit of the depression, and going to therapy has been really helpful in my life. I know it's hard sometimes to take that first step, but when you do, it's pretty great. Now, BetterHelp's network of more than 30,000 therapists are ready to listen to and help you. After taking a brief questionnaire, you'll be matched with a therapist whose expertise fits your unique needs. And thanks to BetterHelp's remote model, you can work with a therapist whose skills might not otherwise be available in your area. You can message your therapist at any time, and you'll receive timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule your choice of phone or video sessions to receive counseling in real time. And in the event that you and your therapist aren't a perfect match, you can easily switch to a new one for no additional charge. So join the more than 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with BetterHelp by visiting betterhelp.com/wisecrack. Or hey, you can just click the link in the video description. When you do, you'll get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wisecrack. Now, back to the show. And just a quick note, we don't have a neuroscientist on our team, so we're not going to talk about whether or not it's a real mental health disorder or any of the science behind that. And we're mostly just going to focus on America, although friends from other countries, please share your experiences in the comments. We like to know what's going on in the world. Okay, so let's start by contextualizing the American ADHD explosion. After World War II, the medical establishment ballooned with major economic and political consequences. Now, this led to what many scholars call a medicalized society. Increasingly, problems that were once considered legal, social, or even moral started being seen through a medical lens and treated with chemical substances. Early aspects of medicalization's incursion on everyday life meant it came to encompass areas like addiction, sexuality, and mental health, according to medical sociologist Peter Conrad. As economic interests, especially from biotechnical and pharmaceutical companies, grew over the decades, everything from aging to weight to menopause became conditions to be fixed. And note that a lot of this builds on the theories of Michel Foucault, someone we've talked about before. But around 1985, technoscientific innovation and changing social conditions brought about a new trend that would be dubbed biomedicalization. According to scholar and health researcher Melina Sherman, biomedicalization means medical interventions are no longer imposed only by medical professionals, but also function as technologies of the self, forms of self-government and self-regulation that individuals apply to themselves. Under these circumstances, maintaining one's health becomes an important individual project with major moral undertones. It's like, why is your step count so low? You lazy POS, you trying to die at 50? I'm not. In this vein, health stopped being merely a matter of curing what ails you and started being about self-improvement, mental optimization, and becoming your best self. Under biomedicalization, the medical establishment's reach necessarily increases further. We turn what Foucault called the medical gaze onto ourselves, transforming our bodies into a laundry list of ailments. What's more, it's no longer just about treating an ever-growing list of conditions, but about calculating risks and surveilling yourself for future ailments. The threat of illness means even healthy people feel on the cusp of being sick and will WebMD their way to higher blood pressure, which actually kills, unlike the weird bump I had under my armpit that I went to the doctor about, and I thought the doctor was gonna say, oh, that bump under your armpit is bomb cancer. It's a type of rare cancer that's a bomb that's gonna explode and you're gonna die. But instead he was just like, nah, don't worry about it. I hope he was right. The problematization of the normal leads to rampant self-diagnoses, and seeing every weird little thing that your body does is a sign that you have cancer, IBS, or both. It also means using the fact that you haven't put together that IKEA furniture you bought 2 weeks ago to confirm your self-diagnosed ADHD. ADHD heads, let me know in the comments, what's the longest that you've ever bought a thing that you didn't take out of the box or put together or anything like that? I think for me, it has to be close to a year, but I'm curious about some of you, so let us know. Okay, so now that we have some context, let's talk about that four-lettered specter. While symptoms now associated with ADHD have been observed in children for several centuries, they were attributed to the individual's moral failings, or even as late as the 1960s, to minor brain damage. In 1937, one pioneering doctor tried treating ADHD-like behavior disorders with the amphetamine Benzedrine, but the psychological establishment wasn't into giving kids drugs, and talk therapy remained the solution of choice. By 1980, attention deficit disorder was recognized as an official classification, and medicated cases skyrocketed in the 90s, right around the time biomedicalization entered the picture. ADHD is a great example of biomedicalization, where we're taking drugs not to necessarily cure anything long-term, but to manage and improve ourselves for optimal functioning.
I know what you mean. Kyle gets so hyper sometimes he runs around and screams like a little 8-year-old. I am 8.
And the weird thing with ADHD, right, is that if you're not medicated, you can still function, you can still live, you can still do all the stuff. It's just way harder to do it. So, that's why for some people it feels like, oh, do I really need these meds? Should I just work harder? Should I get better habits? It's a weird one. That management project has become indefinite as ADHD has increasingly been expanded into the terrain of adult life, rendering it a chronic condition. As Sherman writes, in the case of ADHD, the child who grows into an ADHD adult is produced as a biomedical subject who has been socialized in the art and practice of constant self-regulation and who achieves health and well-being through his or her purchasing habits. In other words, by getting their hands on some of that sweet, sweet Adderall, which keeps Teva Pharmaceuticals very, very happy and well fed. Though it very well might not be hungry due to the appetite suppression, one of the effects of ADHD meds. Hey, if you're on your meds right now, guys, have you eaten a snack recently? Have you drank water? Pause this video and go do it. Now, we're not going to belittle the very realness of ADHD, and not just because a lot of Wisecrack staff deals with the effects on a daily basis while still somehow getting you 2 videos a week. Also, subscribe to our Patreon because mental health care is expensive and our company insurance plan doesn't really cover good ADHD psychiatrists. So then I got to pay out of pocket and then you submit it for reimbursements, but then you forget to submit it for reimbursements because you have ADHD. But it still helps to understand the prevalence of ADHD through a broader societal context. Because just as we were becoming good biomedicalized boys and girls, we were also moving from a disciplinary society to an achievement society, according to philosopher Byung-Chul Han. In the process, we were transforming from disciplined subjects to achievement subjects, which means that rather than being encouraged to perform at work through the negativity of punishment,
you just put it in the right file, according to alphabetical order. You're A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Huh? That's all you have to do.
We were encouraged by the positivity of opportunity. It's not do these extra sales calls even though it's not in your job description because otherwise you're fired.
As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize, a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired.
It's you could do these sales calls to improve your career, grow your network, and expand your skill set. Or as Han argues, the positivity of can is much more efficient than the negativity of should. In his book, The Burnout Society, Han argues that every society gets the illnesses they deserve. And our achievement society is all about mental pathologies. We no longer die from measles, unless your mom is an anti-vax influencer, but an unhealthy portion of us have an aching void of, say, depression that we truly feel may never go away. So why the mental pathologies? Well, in our achievement society, Han argues, everybody's become entrepreneurs of themselves, while the drive to maximize production inhabits the social unconscious. As such, we don't really require managers in the same way because we self-manage, or Han would say auto-exploit ourselves voluntarily. As a result, he writes, the achievement subject is faster and more productive than the obedience subject. What's more, under this paradigm, he notes, the subject never actually experiences the feeling of having achieved a goal. As lords and masters of ourselves and our infinite potential, it's no wonder even your hardest working friend is probably like, oh my God, I'm so lazy. I'm so lazy, you guys. I'm the laziest. I only worked 80 hours last week. I'm so lazy and I'm sad and I'm addicted to drugs. Or that so many of us feel like we don't take enough initiative, even as we're working 2 side hustles. At the same time, we're trying so hard to attain and achieve and attain that there are more forces than ever attempting to catch our eyes and ears. Coincidentally, the age of ADHD is also the age of the attention economy, where our undivided curiosity is more valuable than our actual dollars. Right? Because get it, like attention economy, attention deficit, don't have a lot of attention anyways, and we're gonna give all of it to the attention economy, which is what I do most days. And then I fuel the attention economy, so it's like I'm a part of the problem. That feels bad. And it's not surprising that the early architects of the internet utilized psychological research focused on attention. Specifically research that showed how casinos can keep retirees glued to the slot machines all night long. If you want a video on gambling and how it's becoming all of society, let us know in the comments. But, don't enable, because our colleague Lux, if we let him work on a gambling video, he might be like, I gotta gamble more for research, and then we never see him again. So, in the comments, tell Lux why he needs to be careful about his gambling. The Silicon Valley consultant Nir Eyal wrote a book called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products, in which he outlines how the same logic that fuels casino patrons can be used to keep us glued to our screens. Also, editorial moment, it's pretty nuts that we treat people like this as like business leaders, thought leaders, they're so interesting when they're writing books called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. That's just really nuts. Editorial moment over, back to pure objectivity. And it keeps us not just glued to our screens, but dependent on them for a feeling of meaning, value, and social connection. Now, this turns all of digital reality, which is increasingly just becoming reality, into a gamified space. One that just so happens to perfectly align with the ADHD brain's compulsion for gratification and stimulation. So it's ironic that the biggest source of information about ADHD today is the most addictive and distracting platform of all. I mean, hey, no wonder that an app which basically gets our brains to replicate symptoms of ADHD then tells us that we all have ADHD. Okay, so let's focus our collective attention and bring it all together. We live in a world where biomedicalization makes health a self-regulating moral responsibility, where we're all self-diagnosing and trying to sustain and improve our meat sacks and meat brains all the time. Simultaneously, we live in a time of incessant achievement, where we've internalized the positivity of a culture that tells you no work is too much for your boundless potential. Constant monitoring for illness and an inherent feeling of occupational inadequacy is a recipe for pathologizing. And ADHD can seem like an obvious culprit. Meanwhile, we're trying to carry this whole load while everyone is using psychological intel to keep us distracted and unable to form a complete thought before the next adorable chinchilla wielding a shiny purse appears on screen. Now, it's easy to make fun of our fixation on ADHD, but when you really think about it, is it any wonder that we all feel sort of ADHD and seek out treatment for it in hopes of accomplishing more and not feeling insanely distracted all the time? Much less that young people pursuing higher ed are abusing the stimulants that medicate the condition simply to get by in an increasingly competitive ecosystem. Now, you may have heard the popular theory first developed in 1992 that ADHD is basically a gene inherited from our hunter ancestors. The gist is that being fidgety and easily distracted while also having the ability to hyper-focus when necessary is actually pretty advantageous when you're trying not to get mauled by a bear while searching for a juicy trout. But whether or not you buy that your inability to finish your taxes means that you would have been the best hunter in the tribe, we think this theory suggests a salient point. Certain ways of existing can either be prized as advantageous or condemned as medicalized ailments, depending on broader cultural and social realities. Now, that's absolutely not to say that you shouldn't get treatment and help if you're dealing with symptoms of any kind of mental illness. If you don't believe that we love mental health care and think that you all deserve it, that we all deserve it, there's some resources in the description. But still, one example that comes to mind is the condition of hysteria, which was diagnosed most broadly in 18th and 19th century women. And when we say broadly, there's a 75-page catalog of symptoms with effects ranging from nervousness to insomnia to irritability to loss of appetite. Now, today, it's commonly associated with women of that era's sexual frustration, because it was famously often treated via a doctor's massage. And then when the doctor's fingers got arthritic, the bold new invention of the vibrator. Guys, they had to make up a disease because Victorian era men didn't know how to please a woman.
You know, Margaret, we could have sexual intercourse right now.
Yes, we could.
But let's not.
They didn't know how to do sex or foreplay or anything like that, and that's sad. And I would just say that, fellas, step your game up. Now, retrospectively, hysteria is seen as a catch-all term for everything that middle and upper class men found unmanageable and unseemly about the women in their lives. Unmanageable and unseemly feels like a pretty fair way to describe some of the symptoms of ADHD. Whether we're talking about children who don't want to sit still at a desk for 40 hours a week, or adults trying not to go cross-eyed over spreadsheets. Regardless of your age, there's a growing social and cultural expectation that we maintain maximum productivity all the time. And regardless of how your particular symptoms manifest, ADHD makes these expectations tough to meet. Now, anecdotally, the idea for this video came up when a friend of Wisecrack recounted that their psychiatrist would only medicate their ADHD if their symptoms explicitly affected their ability to do their job. Because again, we should only treat mental illness and stuff if it helps us make money for somebody else. Shouts to my psychiatrist who reminded me before that it's okay to take meds on off days because your life matters too. And if you focus more on your hobbies and your friends, that's also good. Shouts to him. I won't say his name because of HIPAA and things of that nature. The financial incentives of medicating ADHD can't be ignored. In 2000, the CDC even did a study to try to figure out how much money was lost due to decreased productivity caused by ADHD. Now, it's worth asking, if ADHD didn't threaten our ability to make the corporate overlords big profits, would we be as incentivized to turn to medication for our symptoms? And to that end, it also feels relevant that ADHD cases have exploded along with increased financial precarity in recent decades. We got some videos on that you could watch if you got the attention for it. In a world with a shrinking social safety net where we watch our job description expand as our wages functionally contract, we simply can't afford not to be productive, whether we're having an off week, a bad day, or God, even just a scatterbrained hour. And of course, it doesn't help that the symptoms of ADHD can easily be dismissed as laziness, which becomes a moral condemnation in a productivity-obsessed society. Hey friends, if you have ADHD and you get mad at yourself and judge yourself for being lazy, I just want to say, you're not buds. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that your brain works the way it does. You can learn to cope, but most importantly, learn to not judge yourself, because it's okay. You're good, I promise you. Unless you're a murderer and have that, then you're bad. But I hope that, actually I wish more murderers had ADHD, because then they would be so lazy and unfocused they wouldn't actually do a murder, which makes the ADHD phenomenon tricky to navigate. It's true that lots of people have ADHD, but it's also true that we live in a world that demands ever more productivity while supplying ever more distractions, thus making lots of people feel like they have ADHD. This all makes it complicated to discern who needs medication to achieve normative neurological functioning and who needs it simply to exist in a society as relentlessly challenging and competitive as ours. But again, we're not neurologists, because there's no way I could have stayed focused enough to get through med school, so we'll just conclude by saying we think the obsession around ADHD reveals something important about a culture where attention is our most valuable resource, that just about everyone from our employers to TikTok influencers are looking to exploit. And if you've made it this far in the video, congrats! You failed the ADHD test by keeping focused on one YouTube video for 15 minutes. Unless, of course, you hyper-focused on this video and a bunch of others, and then you do have it. Yeah, never mind. Don't listen to our advice. We're not doctors. But hey, what do you all think? Is the ADHD explosion reflective of broader social realities? Are we all being distracted into self-diagnoses, or is our hyper-productive culture making us all feel inadequate? Please let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. Thank you so much for your attention and for being here. I hope you know that your attention means a lot to us, and we try to honor it by making good content. So let us know what you think, if we can do it better. And please like, subscribe, and click, and all that stuff. Huge shout out to all of our patrons for supporting us, for helping us be a little less dependent on algorithms and ads. It really means a lot to us. If you're interested in joining that lovely bunch, there's a link in the description, and you can click it. And you go there. If you have ADHD, why not impulsively spend on our Patreon? And in the meantime, remember that your attention is your attention and no one else's attention but yours. So give your attention to yourself and don't let others have it. And I'll see you next time.